even though I knew that My Hero Academia was spiraling down the path of shittiness, I still decided to keep up with the manga just to see how much worse it could get.
Oh, wow. Let me just go turn the light back on or something. I don't know. Alright, so enough of my like shitty editing skills aside and whatever, but yeah, so for those of you who have been to my channel and have seen my videos before, I posted a video a couple months back, like last year, about My Hero Academia, and to this day it is my most viewed, my most liked, and my most hated video of all time. It's gotten the most dislikes out of any video, and it's gotten the most comments too. And you know, there's some people who are siding with me, there's other people who have their own opinions, and then there were a lot of people who did not like what I had to say about My Hero Academia. So yeah, I guess this was a part 2 to that video as well, but also I think it's best that instead of like trying to reply to every single comment there, I'd like to actually address some of them, because I feel like some of them do have valid points, and there are some points that I feel like I could argue against. So let's just see what it is. So the way this is going to work is that I'm going to pull up actually some of the top comments here, probably like 10 comments or so, and I'm just going to read through them and like basically give my response to that kind of comment as well. So here we go. So this user right here said 1 out of 10 rage bait. Thank you. It wasn't meant to be rage bait. This is actually like my honest thoughts about it. So the fact that you said it wasn't good rage bait means that I did my job? Huh? First serious comment though. So this user says, you make some points and you are of course entitled to opinion, however a lot of those points are moot and I believe I can disassemble most of them. So first of all, they talked about character development. Did you not pay attention to Bakugo? He went from mercilessly hating Midoriya to an emotional apology for everything he's done. That's character development right there. Todoroki goes from being cold and apathetic to realizing that the fire quirk was his, not his father's, and free to use. His dad, Endeavor, was probably the most character developed of the bunch, went from using his children as weapons to realizing he must protect them at all costs to the point of isolating himself from them so they can be happy and heal rifts caused by them. Second, if you can name an entire class from Naruto, you can remember Midoriya's class. That's you admitting you couldn't be bothered to remember them, which is silly. Deaths, there were more than you think. Midnight's death had a lot of impact on people like Mina and Mineta, and it's literally what drives them to give their all in the following battles. Before that was Sir Night Eye in the Chisaki arc, a death that haunts Lucas, Mirio, to the end of the series, and still had a lot of emotional weight attached to it, and Shigaraki disintegrated his entire family. So yeah. You're right, you can't complain about people dying, then coming back if you're forgiving Dragon Ball for doing the same, it's double standards. I liked most of the training arcs, it gives a foundation on, these guys became stronger, here's how. In all fairness, I can see why people didn't like them as there were a lot. So yeah, this guy did bring up a lot of good points, I would say, in terms of my arguments, and honestly, it was pretty fair at some points. But I would like to say, so first about the character development. What I really meant about character development, I guess, to make it, ooh, my voice just shook there. But yeah, what I meant to say about character development was that typically if you want a large, I guess this also was supposed to be in something conjunction with the whole character, with the whole like side characters thing as well. With the whole character development thing, yes, like, I mean, I feel like, yes, I agree, Bakugo got a lot of character development. You know, he went from being an asshole all the time to, you know, being actually a pretty chill person at the end. Todoroki though, I feel like his main character development just like happened in that first season where it's like, oh, like this fire quirk's not my dad's, you know, it's mine now so I can do whatever I want with it. And it's a part of me. And after that, I feel like they didn't really do much with him. He just became a background character. Like they kind of hyped him up to be like one of the big 3 in the series, but then it just turns out he wasn't very used much except for like the whole Dobby arc, I feel like. And I don't know, I just felt like he didn't get enough spotlight that he should have gotten, at least. And yes, I agree, Endeavor also had great character development. He was a really shitty dad, and then he became an okay father, I guess. I mean, he's trying to mend things with his kids, so he's trying to be a lot better. But I feel like, you know, like Endeavor wasn't supposed to be that big of a character in my opinion. Like he goes from like this piece of shit dad that we see in like season 1, and then out of nowhere he becomes like a huge part of the story. And I guess it makes sense in a way, since that, you know, he is the number 2 hero and he's now being the number 1 hero since All Might retired. But I don't know, I just feel like this just came out of nowhere. I understand that like he realized he was a piece of shit dad at some point, but I just feel like it came out of nowhere, and like his character just like came out of nowhere. Because again, I feel like the focus is supposed to be on like, you know, like class 1A and everything. And also my counter argument to this is that, you know, between the cast, like I feel like one of the characters that should have the biggest character development should be, you know, the main character, which is Deku. And in my opinion, Deku didn't really have character development at all. If anything, he just maybe became more responsible, but that's like really it. Like nothing really changed about it. He's just the same like hopeful guy that we met in episode 1 with a lot of copium. So I just feel like maybe Deku should have gotten some character development, but I feel like he just really didn't get any at all, which kind of just like crashes a lot of different things for this story. And then with the other characters, like they just not even mentioned at all. Like maybe you should see them like here and there, but that's it. Now, if I can name the entire class of Naruto, then I can remember Midoriya's class. That's admitting I couldn't be bothered to remember them. You're right, I'm not gonna bother memorizing them because they're not that interesting at all. Like these are not interesting characters to me in general. Like we meet them and we think, oh, they're gonna be really cool. They have like all these different powers and everything. And then at the end, it's just like, oh, like we helped. And that's it. Like, oh, we're your friends, Deku. We can do things together. And then like, that's pretty much it. Like you don't really get much more out of them except maybe like a cool side story for like maybe like half an episode or something, or like half a chapter. Now, when it comes to deaths, I feel like, I don't know, like some of these characters, again, a lot of the characters in the cast are not memorable in my opinion. Like the only time that they are memorable is that they have like some sort of connection with All Might or Deku, and then they just don't appear afterwards. Like you talked about, let's see here, you talked about how Midnight had a lot of impact on people like Mina and Mineta. Here's the thing. Who are those characters? I mean, I guess people know Mineta because he's the fucking pervert, and like people just make memes about him all the time. But who are these other characters? Like no one really knows. And if it impacts those characters that we don't really know, then like it doesn't really do much, no? And then with the whole villains thing, like I don't know, like with Sir Knight, I remember bits of him, yeah, and like his death haunts Lucas and everything, but it's just like I feel like he also had very minimal role within that arc or within the entire story in general, and it's just like it felt like a pointless death. But I do know there's another comment here that kind of like counteracts this argument. Let me show you. So this user said this comment right here. Also, just gonna say it, the heroes seriously should have lost a few members. It's ridiculous that all of class 1A and 1B, who haven't even finished their first year of high school, are dragged into a war against the worst criminals in their world's history, and none of them die. So yeah, like I feel like there should have been some deaths in there because, again, like these, besides the whole plot armor thing and the power of friendship thing, like these kids are the least experienced out of a lot of the heroes. I mean, I think, I guess like Deku and like Bakugo are the exception because, well, one, they're the main characters, and two, they've gone up against like these threats multiple times. But the rest of class 1A, they've just been chilling doing like random internships, and they haven't even come across like these villains like as often as the others have done. So they have very little experience, and yet they just don't die. In fact, they just get, in some cases, like some of them are like barely injured too. Like you see a few bruises on them. Maybe it's because it's like, I guess like headed towards for some kids, but there's also blood in the series, whatever. But anyway, yeah, I feel like, you know, maybe there should have been some more deaths that are at least impactful, because if class 1A lost a few members, I think it would have had more impact than like these, you know, random villains and side characters just dying. And then going to the last comment about saying I can't complain about people dying and then coming back if I'm forgiving Dragon Ball. So here's the thing, like with Dragon Ball, it's like, the reason why like some of these people, the reason why like I feel like it's acceptable to a certain extent is because, again, impact to the story and impact to just anime in general. Like I said, with Krillin dying, Goku becomes a Super Saiyan, and like people have loved that scene for decades now to come. And with, I don't know, like with Vegeta dying, like with his explosion, like people say that's a really badass scene, and it's what solidified Vegeta's final character development into becoming more earthling than like, you know, clinging on to like his evil Saiyan side, you know? It has a lot of impact on it. Meanwhile, My Hero's deaths, I feel like you're like, oh, they died. Okay. You know? Alright, took my jacket off. It was getting a little hot in my room. But anyway, this next comment. Terrible video. Stop when you mention filler. Stop saying something is filler when you have no idea what it means. Low stakes moments does not equal filler. Brain rot take. Okay, so by definition then, let's talk about what fillers are. Fillers are episodes that are meant to pad out for some time with things that are maybe non-canon or could be canon, but basically what filler arcs are, or filler episodes are episodes that are meant to pad up time so that the manga can have more chapters available, so that the animation studios can work on them. Or, you know, maybe the animation studios haven't made enough episodes yet, and they are just using these episodes to fill up the time so that they can get right back into the main story once they have finished developing those. That is basically the definition of filler. And the reason why I say a lot of these training arcs felt like filler, I didn't say they were filler, I just said they felt like filler, is because it kind of just felt like they were padding out time before the next main plot, you know? And especially, I think my biggest complaint is the actual school festival arc thing. Yes, I get it, this is My Hero Academia, they're talking about high school lives and all that stuff, but still, they did a whole arc just for cheering up Eri. Like, I get it, yes, you know, the whole point is like, oh, I have to save her, I didn't fully save her, or whatnot, but I don't know, I feel like they could have just done that in like, at most, 2 episodes, instead of dedicating like an entire arc about it, like, because at this point, Deku has gone up against some of like the most atrocious villains in history, and I get it, he needs to have a break and everything, but I don't know, I just feel like some like arcs like these, and then there's like the whole Class 1A versus Class 1B training arc, like no one really gives a shit about Class 1B, like let's really be honest here, no one gives a shit about Class 1B, and yet they dedicated an entire arc of a class fighting them. Like, I just feel like it felt like filler because nothing really develops here, they just get stronger, or they're like, oh, friends forever, and then like that's it. It's like the same thing that we've been hearing for like the past 3 arcs or so. So that's why I say it felt like filler. I'm sorry I offended you if I said filler, but you didn't read the rest of the sentence or like watch the rest of the video, I guess. But yeah, the main reason why I say it felt like filler is because it felt like it didn't really push the plot, it just padded time for the plot to continue, if you get what I mean now. Alright, next comment. This user says, I feel like you could have done more here than the usual 2014 to 2019 MHA hate criticisms, because I do agree that this series is garbage and has issues, but it seems like you're missing the meat of the arguments and didn't really care about the series. You're kind of right, I didn't really care about the series. But anyway, you never really voiced on why the series wasn't good, and most of your criticisms, while valid, don't really have actual reasoning behind them. Number 1, 1A is boring. While that's an opinion you're valid to have, you never really explain why they sucked outside of the basic they don't do anything or no depth, which can be said for any other shonen that you've listed. This is where you should have explained on what makes a good side character for you and whatnot. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty fair point, I would say. So yeah, I'll explain actually what makes a good side character and what doesn't make a good side character. So the reason why I say 1A was really boring is because it felt like they were just there to be in a classroom environment. If you look at, and I know I use Naruto as an example, so I'll use Naruto as an example again. So if you look at other Naruto characters, like for example, some of the big ones like Rock Lee, Mike Guy, or Neji, well not really Neji, he dies, but, or like Shikamaru, you know, they have big roles in upcoming plots. You know, even though like they don't get as much screen time as like Naruto or Sasuke does, like they have a lot of screen time and we get to see the development that they go through. Shikamaru is actually a great example. He's shown as like in the beginning, he's shown as like this really nonchalant guy. Like he doesn't really give a shit about anything. He just either wants to go to bed or just chill, you know? But then we see how far he has progressed in terms of, what it means to be a true ninja and what it means to take responsibility for things, especially when Asuma dies, his sensei. You know, like, all of a sudden now he's out for revenge and he's very active in killing the man who killed his sensei. And, you know, like, we get to see how great of an increase in depth his character is, how big of a role he plays in this operation. And then later in the war, he becomes a pretty big strategist and takes part in the final battle against Madara. And so something like that is what definitely makes a side character to me. I hope I explained it well enough for you. So I think that's what makes a good side character. My Hero barely did any of that, in my opinion. Like, they should have done it for at least like 5 characters, but they only really did it for like 3. And it just didn't work out, in my opinion. Number 2, calling the high school stuff filler when the story is called My Hero Academia is funny. Sure, you can dislike the school stuff in the story, but calling it filler is just idiotic reasoning, especially when your quote-unquote reasoning doesn't have any reasoning. So I don't really know what I said. I mean, I made the video a couple months back, so I guess I'll look back on it, but I guess I'll re-explain things, and I explained this earlier, but the high school stuff in the filler, yes, I get it, it's called My Hero Academia, it's about high school students and all that, and there should be like a little slice of life in high school stuff there, with the training arcs and all that stuff. But also, again, I feel like I said before, I feel like it was filler, excuse me, I felt like it was filler because I felt like it just padded time before the next arc, it padded for time before the next arc. Yes, I get it. It's like, oh, friendship, you know, we're friends. We're going to enjoy our high school lives, whatever, la la la. But at the same time, though, it's like, this is supposed to be, like, it mainly shows a lot of the action at this point. There's a lot of shit that's been happening already. Like, their training camp got interrupted. Multiple training camps actually got interrupted by the League of Villains. And then they end up fighting a criminal, Stain, I believe that was his name, or whatever. And then they end up just keep getting into these huge conflicts that basically go outside of the scope of their training. And so at that point, I just feel like, why not just send them out into the real world and get some more real world experience rather than just keep training them in school and all that. I mean, yes, I get it. There are first years, and like freshman year of high school of anything is pretty bad. I mean, you're adapting to new things, but at the same time, I feel like they've adapted to a lot of things that even their upperclassmen probably have not even done before. So I don't know. I just feel like that arc pretty much was just filler. And the third thing is that this guy brings up the death part again. And the one thing that he does different is a story's quality isn't contingent on how many people die. I agree. Yeah, a story's quality isn't contingent on how many people die. But I feel like the reason why the story wasn't as good as it should be is because these character deaths had very little impact. To me, it just felt like Attack on Titan, which another comment actually kind of said. But to me, it felt like Attack on Titan. Like, you meet them for like one episode and they just die, and you're like, oh okay. You know, like, it just felt like cannon fodder to me. So, but yeah, I will agree, story's quality isn't contingent on how many people die, but I feel like the type of character that dies is what makes the quality a lot better, if you get what I mean. Like, I'll give an example. Let's go Full Metal Alchemist. Major Hughes, when he dies, like, he's a side character, but he does a lot in the story overall. And then when he dies, it becomes one of the biggest motivations for one of the bigger side characters and for the main characters as well. The Elric brothers now have to realize that maybe the government that they are working for isn't as great as they thought it was. And, you know, Roy, he's like, oh shit, there is corruption in the government. I'm gonna figure this all out. You know, like, it becomes something of a bigger story, a bigger part of the story, which ultimately culminates to, yes, this country is fucked and we have to stop it, you know? So I think, you know, I think certain character deaths are very important. And then the last thing they said was they're not sure why I thought that the We Become the Greatest Heroes part was bad, and because that's one of the major themes of passing the torch to the next generation throughout the series, especially after the fall of All Might, when you see now heroes have become over-reliant of All Might throughout his reign as #1 of Japan. So the reason why I didn't like the We Become the Greatest Heroes part was, I'm just gonna be completely honest here, it was just too cheesy for me. It really was. Like, in all honesty, like, I was led to believe that maybe Deku would be recognized as the greatest hero of all time by the public, and even though, yeah, that sounds like really douchey of him because it's like, oh, like, I got all this fame and shit, like, at the same time, I feel like we became the greatest heroes, like, inspiration is a great thing, but it just felt like it was really rushed when I read through the final chapters, and it just felt like really lazy writing overall. Yeah, like too corny, too cheesy. Maybe if there was another way that it was made to be like, oh, we became the greatest heroes, maybe I would accept it more, but the way it was written was just pretty rushed to me, I would say. But yeah. So stuff that I didn't mention but probably should have: villains, world building elements like societal institutions, and arcs after the overhaul arc. So okay, yeah, I can talk about those. So the villains, I will say, weren't that memorable, except for maybe like the overhaul in the Chisaki arc. Like, he was a memorable villain because I feel like he truly showed like the dark side of the world, you know? He is a gangster, and we all know that like gangsters are like typically bad people, but then like what he's doing is what truly showed Deku how cruel humanity can be. And that was what I really thought was made a great villain. But then like afterwards, it's just like you have, if I recall, there was like a revolutionary arc or something, and it's just villains going after other villains for like ideals and all that stuff, and I was just like, okay, but like I get it, there's like clashing ideals and everything, and there's like the whole like, I think Shigaraki like basically like turns the Revolution Army into a cult because it was a cult before or whatever, but like still, like I feel like that those kinds of arcs didn't really make sense, and it just didn't like I guess it like shows how Shigaraki rose to become a bigger villain than he is now. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel like it wasn't really needed, you know? And then like with the other arcs afterwards, like I don't really recall some of the other arcs afterwards, but I don't know, like arcs after the overhaul arc, I just felt like they were so forgettable, especially like the final battle. I felt like, so the final battle in and of itself was like spread into like, I don't know, 4 or 5 arcs, but those 4 or 5 arcs should have just been one arc in my opinion, because it just showed a lot of the side battles, and then like, you know, I feel like 3 of those arcs were genuinely like all for ones, like different boss phases like I told you about in my previous video, and it just felt like, I mean, if you're just gonna keep evolving like that, might as well just put it into one arc, you know? Other you know, like other anime out there have done that. Like if you have multiple phases of one boss, you just put it into one arc. You don't have to split it into like several different arcs. So I guess my main complaint is about the final battle arc specifically. I feel like the other arcs are, I mean, they were just kind of forgettable to me. I kind of forgot what happened in them as soon as I finished reading them too. So I just really thought they really didn't make a lasting impact on the story, in my opinion. Now the world building stuff, yeah, I agree. I didn't talk about that much, but I'll talk about it here now. So with the whole world building thing, I feel like they could have gone beyond this world has a lot of people with superpowers. Some people don't get born with superpowers and they're looked down upon. I wish they would look upon that a little bit more, because like we only get like the classic bullying stuff and then that's it, but we don't really see how maybe adults, you know, who were born quirkless are treated in society, you know. But I will say they did bring up something pretty interesting that I wish they delved into a little bit more, and it was about basically it was racism. So there's a lot of people who have quirks that basically change them into animals as well. And I noticed that in one of the final arc chapters, I think, there was basically a lady who was not granted access to a shelter because she had an animal quirk. And so this whole racism thing, you know, and all that, it was really glossed over. It felt like, I mean, like, I think the whole thing was like situated in like a couple of panels or something like that, but I just wish they went into that a little bit more, and seeing how like, oh, like, you know, good people can also do a lot of evil things, even if it isn't onto the scale of world domination or anything. Racism is a very evil thing overall that should not even happen in the first place. And so, you know, delving deeper into that kind of societal construct of, oh, like, you are an animal, you are not a human like us, you know, that kind of interested me a lot, and seeing how they would delve into that, but they kind of did it, in my opinion. So they glossed over that, and I'm glad that you brought up this whole world building thing. I skipped over that, and I'm sorry about that. Now there are some comments that I do disagree with, that I like try to basically ride on the hate train that I supposedly started, so I'll go over those as well. There's one like, I agree, dude, it's so bad I can't get past the first episode. I disagree with that. I actually thought that the first 2 seasons were pretty good, especially how it was basically a new concept. The world of superheroes where powerless people are actually the minority, rather than in, you know, Marvel and DC, like I said before, the majority is just regular people, and then you have people who have superpowers, and it's just a small handful of the population. So I thought that was a very interesting take. I don't know what this guy is talking about. And this guy said, basically, bro, what if I just did the Avengers again? Bro can't write for his life. I think he did write really well, again, for the first 2 seasons. And like, what if he did the Avengers again? I don't really think about that. I don't really think so. Because again, these guys a lot of them are trying to be solo heroes. Yes, they set up agencies, but just because you're in an agency doesn't mean you are in a team. There are a lot of team ups happening, but you could also go solo. I mean, like in the first episode alone, I think they showed like 5 solo heroes that could have been under an agency, but you know, they were just working on their own. Bro added overflow on the list as if no one would pause the video and read the titles. Okay. Yeah, I will admit I didn't think anyone would pause the video and like read through the titles that I put through. And no, I didn't add overflow because I am a pervert. But I just added it because fuck it. I actually just didn't think no one would stop the video and like read through the list. But yeah, I think I covered up pretty much most of the popular comments and the comments that I found interesting as well. There's a lot of comments on it. I think there's like 50 of these. So covering all of them obviously is not possible in a short video. So yeah, I hope I went over everything and explained things a lot more clearly than my last video. And if not, I guess give me more hate. I agree to disagree, you know. I'm not gonna try and start any beef, but yeah, I just thought these were these comments were really interesting, and I just wanted to address them. So yeah, if you guys liked that video, and if you guys liked my take on it, or if you guys have changed based on the takes that I gave in this video, leave a comment below, and let's start another discussion. But yeah, that's it for this week. I'll see ya.